Anyhow, Heavenly Father, we are gathered here today in this beautiful evening. Very eager, Father, to learn your wisdom, to purify our souls. We pray that you open our hearts, our minds, our souls, make us receptive to the message that you are about to deliver. Help us, Father, to really grasp the knowledge that you wish to transmit to us, and help us to put this knowledge into practice in our everyday lives so that we can grow closer and closer to you with every moment, with every experience, with every particle of our beings. Amen.
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 Thank you, Juan.
You're welcome. Of course.
Thank you. Well, I feel like I'm repeating myself sometimes when I talk about how basic and fundamental every lecture is to the pathwork, and this one is no exception. This is very straightforward. There are other lectures that deal with a more kind of convoluted analyses of like the vicious circle, or how one feeling leads to another and one wrong conclusion leads to another. But this is very straightforward and basic, and is especially beautiful in my view. In the beginning, the guide takes this metaphor of the Christmas tree. This is a Christmas message. And every candle on the tree represents an uncovering, some kind of a revelation of truth. And the more one reveals one's own truth, the more these candles are lit on the tree. And then they all culminate in the star at the top of the tree, which is, oh, here's Beverly, which is the unification of, which is the unitive state, how everything becomes one. Hi, Beverly. I'll wait a second for her to come on. Hey, Beverly. Greetings. So we have a bunch of folks here today. We've got Teresa and Juan, Joel, Teresa K, Sid Schwartzberg, Pathwork royalty, Kevin Hasto.
It's Barbara. Barbara Loveline?
Yes.
Hi, Barb.
Hey, Sid. Good to see you.
Tracy. I mean, Sid and I were both kids in the Pathwork, sort of, a long time ago. And so Sid's mother was an important part of the Pathwork with my mother. So we share a lot, really, in this spiritual path that we've been on. And I remember that when this lecture was given, I was 17, 18. I'm not sure if I was there at this lecture, but Sid remembers that he was there. All right. So,
Live? With Barbara?
yeah.
Live?
I was alive.
He was there.
You're live.
Present,
there?
yeah.
Right?
He
Yeah.
was present, yeah.
In the moment.
So in the
Being channeled.
in the beginning of the lecture, the guide delivers the promise of the pathwork, which is a constant theme in so many lectures. Every one of you here is able at this point to create your life anew, to set a new direction from within. Much of this is already happening to many of you, as you are well aware, and more can happen. At this time in your realm of consciousness, you celebrate a symbolic event. You celebrate the Christ consciousness or the divine consciousness deep within your own being. Most human beings live a lifetime, nay, many lifetimes, without ever knowing that there is something within that surpasses the ordinary consciousness. This extraordinary consciousness, the sublime consciousness, must be awakened within the course of the evolutionary journey of each entity. So what we're talking about here is the awakening of consciousness, right? That is one of the fundamental grounds of the pathwork, the raising of consciousness. And all spiritual paths aim at raising consciousness. So in the second paragraph, the guide, as I said, embroiders on this metaphor of the Christmas tree, that every light on the Christmas tree represents a recognition. Or every light on the Christmas tree, he says candles. Now, of course, when I was a kid, we actually had candles. on the tree. Now you don't do it because it's dangerous. But every candle,
You actually had candles?
yeah, we actually had candles and a bucket nearby with water, just in case. But we had candles, Hungarian, I guess, thing. So every candle is a recognition. Every candle, this is what the candles are. Second paragraph. Each recognition, each insight, each honest admission, each shedding of a partial mask, each breaking through of a defense, each step of courage and honesty, where you take responsibility, is a lighting of yet another candle. So all of those things that we do to help each other, to help ourselves grow, every single one of those is a candle, metaphorically. So the great lighting of the whole tree, he says, is an ongoing process, and the more candles are lit, the greater the joyousness and the glory become. With great joy, we observe how much more of the glory, how much more of this glory and this joy that you, my dearest friends, are now being able to activate and to stand. There again, we come to the concept of standing pleasure and standing glory and standing joy, which are not so easy to do. Right? We feel joy, and then we have to clamp down right away. Page 2. So now the guy talks about what this message is really about, which is the need for self-acceptance. That is what so many of the lectures are about. The need for self-acceptance means the need to accept negativity to a great degree. Again and again, you lose sight of its importance. You get stuck in your self-hate, which then makes you put the blame on someone or something else. This is the danger. The more you hate yourself, the more you put your hatred onto others, because self-acceptance seems too final a judgment, too self-annihilating. So the activity of admitting what is negative is frightening, threatening, especially to the ego and the idealized self-image, which obviously likes to believe that we're perfect. However, the guide says, I want to convey to you that there is nothing whatever that need be rejected, nothing whatsoever you cannot accept and forgive. The only thing that is truly destructive and makes you lose your bearing is not accepting and forgiving, and therefore acting out. So now the guide introduces the main thing about this lecture that it's kind of famous for, which is in every negative quality, a positive one is embedded. Now, I think this is a difficult thing to comprehend because I think we're used to thinking about that negativity and positivity are separate. All the negative things are on one side and the positive things are on another side. We're not used to thinking about it the way the Pathwork conceives of it, which is that there's only one energy current. There's not, this energy can go in either way. And that the original positive current direction got turned into a negative direction, a negative quality. So.
We have a living example running for president.
A living example? Okay.
Yeah.
But we can't talk politics because we're like a 501c3, you know. But leaving that aside.
We still have hopes.
Yeah.
Cool.
It made me lose my train of thought. There's only one current, that's right. So that the current gets distorted by our images, our trauma, what happens to us.
Yeah.
We lose sight and we let the negative aspects take over the positive energy. The positive energy gets twisted, changed, distorted into negative qualities. So I just find it tremendously liberating. The idea that if you feel afflicted by a negative emotion or a negative quality, to understand, realize the positive original current. Because I think that in some sense, that's kind of like a gigantic key. Because if you feel the energy of a negative manifestation, a negative feeling, predilection, if you feel that energy and you meditate on that energy, all of a sudden you can feel it transform into the positive quality. So the guide later on answers questions, and it's kind of like I'm very impressed, right? I mean, these people throw things out to the guide that are pretty difficult to figure out. Like he goes, let's see. What's the positive origin in my life? I'm sorry, in my tendency to avoid taking responsibility for my life, my tendency to avoid. Now, that's a really tough one. How can you find something positive in the tendency to avoid taking responsibility? So the guide says, in its original divine manifestation, it is the quality of letting go and letting flow, of not letting the ego control take over and blot out the eternal flow of being, of not being cramped and tight and overactive with the ego forces. It connotes giving in and surrendering to the flow of being. So that, I think, is very deep. I mean, the idea that on the one hand, you think, I just don't want to take responsibility for my life and let everything go downhill. I really don't care. But what is that? What that really is I can let go and let flow, just not in the positive direction. I'm not thinking about that. The act of letting go and letting flow is surrendering to something deeper. You know, I would say to the spiritual self, if you don't want to take responsibility, basically, I think what you're saying here on the negative is that you don't want the ego to control everything. That means the ego wants to take responsibility and control everything. But if you surrender to the spiritual self, you let go to something deeper, to something that inspires you from within. So the concept is that if you think and meditate on these, first the positive, or I'm sorry, the negative, then the positive aspect, it can really be liberating. So these are, I think you have to be in a deep place to really understand many of these oppositions between the negative and seeing what the original positive quality is. So I want to propose that we discuss this tonight with this view about the negative and positive qualities, that there's no negative quality that doesn't have a positive origin or a positive aspect.
So is that the point of the lecture? I'm sorry, I didn't have time to read it. It was
Go ahead.
crazy busy today. So is that the point of the lecture, that basically every single negative quality came from the positive current?
Yes.
And is twisted, and we can twist it back?
That's right.
And not just
Yeah, go
for
ahead, Kevin.
yourself, but also for everyone. So any negativity you experience on any level on this plane comes from a divine origin and a divine current.
Beautiful.
You're experiencing the negativity because you're not allowing yourself to have positive experience.
Right.
Well, it's also what precedes this, which says that, and now when you read this, it's the only thing that is truly destructive and makes you lose your bearing is not accepting and forgiving yourself. Those qualities.
Yeah, it points
So
it back
that's the-
within,
So
yeah.
this is the
Yeah.
doorway, this is like the
Not
foundation.
accepting and forgiving
It's the
the
key.
negative quality.
Yes, in other words, we don't want to accept our negative qualities, we don't
Yes.
see them. And so we're not living in the truth, we're not living honestly. So we're living from guilt and shame.
And project. Right. projecting something onto others.
Correct.
Whatever inside of us.
What's ever inside of us, like this whole thing of point the finger back, remember that you both talk about, but yeah, that pointing the finger back is all over this lecture, and honestly, just the one thing to re-accentuate what you said on, Alan, is the guide on page 2 uses every, like many times, okay? And I think it's important because it's every part of you. It's every negative quality. I mean, this is rare to hear such absolutes. But when the guide uses such absolutes, it tells me that it's literally every. Like imagine, think about people in your life or in the global construct that bother you, that perturb you, that bring up anger in you. Well, that's in you. That's what it's basically saying here. It's every single one of those things can be constructive if we looked at it with the higher self. That's what I think it's.
And the way to it is to accept yourself unconditionally with the good and the bad.
Well, I think that the point here is to make the recognitions that we make on the path, right?
Yeah.
These recognitions are the lighting of these candles.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about the issue of what a negative quality exactly is. Now, or a negative trait. Now, the guide mentions, I think, 7. I have a very strong lack of faith. I do not want to believe in God. That's 1. What is the positive aspect of a fearful, anxious state? That's another one. I mistake in being rebellious and going against authority. Another one. What is the positive origin in my tendency to avoid taking responsibility for my life? Another one. What is the positive origin of playing the victim game? Another one. What is behind the defense and compulsion of telling jokes? Another. Competitiveness, self-centeredness, wanted to be the center of the attention. Another one. Abuse of power, of a position of authority. Last one. I can't imagine anything positive in the tendency to remove yourself, being cool, pretending to be different. So all of these, the guide answers with the positive aspects, qualities of these. Now, these aren't emotions. They're negative traits or negative tendencies, right? Is that so, Tracy? I mean, how do you see it?
No, I think they're negative manifestations,
Now, behavioral manifestations, right? So any behavior, can we say that? That any behavior which is negative also has a positive aspect.
Yeah.
Is that a fair statement?
That's what the guy's gone through, one after the next.
Right.
So
So,
this is also just energy, right? So energy can't be created or destroyed, it can only be. So everything is energy. This is like you just said when you introduced the lecture, one energy current. Well, you've got within that one energy current, both things.
I think you can see it though on the point of feelings though, Alan, because just in the sense of when you take the self as a whole and what we conceptualize as the self and the individual, and we experience that through our reactions to behavioral things that we don't necessarily like. And when we feel those energies come up, they manifest as feelings or they manifest as specific reactions within us, which are, they call us at least back to check ourselves, I think is what the guide is talking about here. To reinvestigate our own contribution to the resonance that's occurring within us. And not pointing the finger only, but rather looking back at ourselves and saying, maybe if we saw the positive in the world or positive in what traits occur in others, we wouldn't be manifesting such negativity. But on the other end, why are we manifesting such negativity? Because again, it's within us. And we can find the roots of that negativity only within us, not within the thing we point the finger at.
Right. That's one of the main themes. Yeah, that's one of the main themes of the pathwork, right?
Right.
Is that everything that you see is is a reflection of your own internal state of consciousness. And of course, that changes because we're not always the same ourselves, you know?
Right.
I mean, have you noticed like some days you're just having a bad day and everything goes wrong and everything you see pisses you off? And then other days you just kind of, yeah, everything's beautiful and everything. So nothing has changed in the external world. It's been within us. So I think, I mean, it talks about one of the bubbles of reality. One of the lectures talks about bubbles of reality. I wish I could find it. We could do it next. But that everything, we have all these bubbles of reality that we're all functioning in, and how what's in our own bubble of reality is a reflection of what's inside of us. That's Pathwork 101. And so the guide comes back to that over and over again, and he's doing it here, but in a kind of a weird, he's like saying, don't be afraid to see the negative in you that pisses you off because Joel pisses me off, because it's in you too, but that's fine because it's at the end of the day, it's just the distortion of something positive. So it's like helping you, right? It's like helping you. If you see that, you know, whatever, he doesn't want to take responsibility, whatever it is, one of the, whatever. Well, okay. Right. No, they're all in all of us, right? Then you can then, you know, accept it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of building on itself. It's like you're seeing something as a reflection of something in you. Don't worry, because even if it's negative, it's a distortion of something positive. So look for what's positive and then allow that to come to the surface, because that energy current, which is can't be, you know, you can't create it or destroy it. You can just transform it. So you can transform.
That's the thing.
Yes.
As soon as you realize
Yes.
that, you realize it's not worth fighting against.
No.
Because it's just a useless effort
Yes.
to fight against what is.
Yes.
It's funny, for some reason, as humans, I feel like we think we can fight against the negative qualities in others
No.
because they're not eternal, or they're not connected to the eternal, or they're just things we can fight against.
Anything is doomed to fail.
But doomed to fail, exactly.
Well,
Doomed to
Eckhart
fail.
Tolle, who I follow, I mean, probably we all do, but you know, it's like this is one of his themes, is that anything, when he hears about like the fight against drugs, the fight against cancer,
Yep.
it's doomed to failure.
Yep.
And what was it, who was it that said darkness cannot stamp out darkness, only light can do that, hatred cannot
Yeah.
Jesus.
change
right.
hatred, only love can do that. You can't
Martin Luther King.
Is that?
transform with the positive aspect of it.
Right. But I think what's so revolutionary about this lecture and what touched me the most is that it is complete. I don't know what it is within me that needs that, but the fact that I read every and the fact that I see that the one energy is complete means that there's no leakage in this
It's
lecture.
given to the children.
Yeah. Hey, welcome. That's cool.
I
Yeah.
know this, how they said to Joe, you know, this is the first lecture I've read where I ever really struggled with, because it was given to the children. That's where I'm at.
But it's so, it was so beneficial. I just want to mention it was so beneficial to my own personal journey because it was so complete in its acknowledgement that even when you think there's some leakage in the world, or even when you think there's a reason to point the finger, stop. Just stop, pull back. And if I hear that kind of completion kind of thing, I was like, wow, that's huge. That means I need to check myself before I wreck myself, as I said, they say, you know, like go back and look within.
It's always
It's
so
transformative
It's
to
always
recognize
that way.
that.
Whatever
It's
pisses you off
close.
with somebody else's issue.
Yeah.
And the
It
more
was
it
like-
pisses you off, the more it's in you.
Stronger.
Yeah.
The bigger the pain, the bigger the amount.
It's hidden.
It's, yeah.
And that's the lighting the candle, like, I've been really focused on light and darkness lately.
Right, yeah.
And I know Neil deGrasse, you know, that scientist.
The
Yeah, Tyson.
Yeah, he said, he has this little YouTube clip where he says, is there a such thing as heat? Yes. Is there a such thing as cold? No, because cold doesn't exist. It's the absence of heat.
Mm.
So when I talk about darkness and light, I think of darkness as the absence of
Yeah.
light. So when I think about transforming the negative
Yeah.
qualities, and yet, like, I'm always like, well, how do you do that? You know, like, I know I have negative qualities. How do you get there? And you need more information, more light. That's the lighting the candle. The insights, you have to be open to more insights that bring more light, because darkness doesn't even really exist.
Mm,
When you think about hatred being a dark thing, it's not real.
The absence of
Right.
love.
It's
Right.
the absence of love. So if you
Right.
bring, you know, so I always think of that Neil
Yeah.
deGrasse Tyson.
Teresa, I
thing.
wrote on the first page, each candle you light helps you find more dim ones that you can then light next.
Right.
So in a sense,
Spreads quicker.
right,
Once you
so
start doing it.
this
you can find
incremental
ways.
or iterative approach that the guide is talking about on, I don't know, the bottom of page 1, it's so transformative, because once you put this, like, again, the total against, hey, it's an iterative approach, yeah, you might not see it all right now. That feeling.
You have to be really open and honest.
Yes.
You
Somewhere in
do,
there,
you have to go, you know
talks
what?
about, like,
I
Yeah.
just got pissed off by my manager, but you know what? I'm gonna let it go, because I
I do
know.
the same thing.
Yeah, I know internally or whatever that.
So how do
I
you,
can work that
how do
out.
we think people can get a line on these traits? Like, in other words, you'd say something like, I'm the kind of person who
The traits are amazing.
is rebellious. I'm the kind of person that feels anxiety. I'm the sort of person that, and you fill in the blank
I
with
think
what your
the
negative
daily
trait is.
review,
You
the
have
daily
to.
review where you see.
Oh, that's a very good
patterns.
idea. So in other words, if you do
Patterns
the
show
daily
up.
review, and then you said, hey, guess what? I'm the kind of person that
I keep
distrust
recreating
people
this
or-
situation over and over.
And honestly, 1 year later, you might find yourself to be a different person with a different
Well,
set
you
of
would.
unique traits, because you were blinded
Right.
to what was underlying the first set of traits
Well,
that you saw.
It's-
Honestly, I saw this thing shifting for me all the time.
Yeah, because as soon as you start observing,
As soon as
it's,
you start, right,
it's gonna
yeah.
pixelate as
It's
Mary.
constantly changing and
Yeah.
pixelating, like
Mary
Marion
says.
brings up, exactly. But,
Well, one of
but
the
but
main,
it's so important, the daily.
the guide says in one of the early lectures, the mere observation of one's
Yeah,
will cause it to dissipate. I couldn't believe that the first time I read that, because I'm just like, no, you gotta do something. That's how I was raised, you gotta do something. I'm not gonna graduate from law school because I, do sit around and do nothing, but it's true. Of
Yeah,
course
it
it's
is.
true. The mere observation of one's distortions will cause them to start to pixelate. The more you observe, the more they'll pixelate, and then you start seeing the truth. that
So
was
like,
hidden.
let's say
Oh,
if
there
you're
is some.
angry at that boss is pissing you off, you feel angry at him, you just observe your anger.
Yes, that's
right?
all you do.
You need to first, at least,
You
at the
just
very
observe
least,
it.
observe your anger.
And don't judge it, and don't
And-
beat yourself up, that's really important. Don't
Right,
beat
but
yourself
remember
up.
that at least acknowledge that the origin is within.
Yeah,
You cannot get around that.
no,
That is
That's
at
a
least the
fact.
basic acknowledgement.
yeah, that's.
That
a fact.
it's within,
Yeah.
and there's no reason to
being-
beat yourself up about
Right.
it. But there's no blame externally, no matter what's happening.
Right,
There's no, because honestly, I'm not saying that what everyone else does is walking on water. It's not that at all. It's not that they're perfect. It's just that your reaction to it is where the solution lies for you.
Doesn't matter.
It
It doesn't
doesn't matter how
matter.
wrong they are.
Right.
It matters that you see the divine in them.
yeah,
That's what ACIM would
Well,
say.
well, it's also. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah.
It's
So
what,
it's-
yeah. Please.
So as soon as I go like this. The more that I can simply, the more that I simply identify what it is that's pissing me off. Right? He's being rude, he's overlooking me, she thinks she's all that. Just take one. And then say, okay, how am I like that? Where is that in me?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a reasonable starting.
yeah. that's a
And
really
and
good
then
point.
every time that I do that. This completely disappears. I'm no longer, and it's not a tit for tat. It's not, let's say. What I find it in myself, he's always overlooking me. How do I overlook people in my life?
Yeah.
Right? It's not, and then there's no measurement like, oh, well, he overlooks people much more than I do. As soon as I find it in myself, I'm no longer even thinking about that person. It dissolves.
Right.
Was there a negative trait, Joel, that you have that you can?
It's
Yeah.
endless.
Just give me one.
Just one, ready to rip some guy's head off who's cut the light over here on his bicycle.
And what's
ready
the
to
positive
go.
aspect of that?
What's compassion for all the other people that I
That
feel
could be
he's putting
dangerous.
in danger.
Right, compassion, concern, because that what he's doing is a dangerous not only to himself but to others. So.
Well, let's
He
look
could
at
get
that a
killed.
little bit
He
more.
could
You
get
wanna
killed by
Well,
that.
if he
rip this
just-
guy's head off because he
What did
didn't
do to
obey
you?
traffic laws, right?
What did he do to
He
you?
got through the light and I'm trying to cross the street
Yeah, so it's dangerous.
and he's going 35 miles an hour.
Wow, that is.
So maybe you could say
What
that
is that a
that's,
negative reaction?
That is the thing.
He
He has
Exactly. I read.
it has something to do with righteousness there, right? I mean, like with
no, I missed that, I missed that. What was that, Sid?
I mean, it's an emotional response to that.
Right.
I'm asking, why is that a negative reaction?
Right.
Well, I
feel it's negative or not.
He felt a lot of hatred.
Yeah.
He felt a lot of.
I asked him to give me a negative trait.
That was.
Yeah, if you felt it was negative, it was negative to you.
Well, maybe you have to dig deeper.
Yeah.
No, it's a lot of hatred, so that's.
Yeah, it's not recognizing, I mean, let's
But
face it.
doesn't it have to do something with like obeying the law? Like you
Well,
feel that
that's
he's violating the law.
exactly, he's not.
Yeah,
following
yeah,
the
so
law.
that,
So
there's
then
something
I say-
about like, right and wrong here. It's like,
Yeah.
Well,
he's not abiding by the law.
I mean,
The law
anger,
says
the
he's
guy-
supposed to stop by the light.
the guy
And
often
he
says,
didn't.
Okay.
anger is
something-
not necessarily
Right,
negative.
so the key
Yeah.
to unwinding that is
Anger,
to
no,
see
but
how
hate
I don't
is.
follow the
He
rules.
felt hatred.
Maybe something in you,
Sometimes,
Yeah.
right.
something in you there that you feel within that where you're not really adhering to the law.
Exactly.
Is it? I mean,
Think about if you think of the law in religion, whatever that might be, whatever the
right.
religion is,
I
right?
think it has something to
We
do
all
with
know that we're not following that. We're human. We're not capable of completely following the doctrine of any religion, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And so we're ashamed
yeah.
that.
Well, you call it the Ten Commandments, don't you? Is that difficult?
No, I rolled it,
No, I just wanted to kill him.
I put it down to two.
That's what I laid right
There's
there.
only
Wanted
two,
to kill.
remember?
Thou shalt not murder.
Alan's enjoying.
But they're
That's what
all,
Christ
they're
said.
all contained within two, but that doesn't mean that they exist.
What are
They
the
still
two?
The laws are
Yeah.
guidelines,
Jesus
right?
said all the commandments are contained, there are only two
Yeah, it's only
commandments.
two, yeah.
God
No.
was
I have a comment.
Oh, I'm sorry, Barbara. All right.
Yeah,
come on.
that's okay. Well, I just want to say that sometimes we don't have the big picture. When somebody goes through a light, maybe they have a dying child in their car and they, their judgment in that moment is not thinking about a pedestrian. They're doing the best they can. So that's just the example. So that sometimes it's not our job to judge somebody else.
I would almost say it's
Never,
never
never,
our job to judge.
Never.
Yeah.
But the thing
Right.
is, Joe, that-
Yeah, so I'm talking about,
It's the reaction that you had, well, that's the thing, right? That you need. It's not what he did per se, but what,
well,
how
I'm
you.
trying
how
to
you
zero
react.
in on this.
Yeah,
We have plenty
breaking
to
the
do.
rules.
I'm trying to zero in on this thing about the negative traits. Like, is that a negative trait? Maybe not.
Well, it's judging, it's putting myself above him.
It's how you feel about it. If you feel negative about doing it, if you
Exactly.
feel negative about doing it, it's a negative thing.
Exactly.
That's your
Anger
choice.
is not necessarily.
Yeah, I don't.
You know when you're dirty emotionally,
Yes.
right? You know when
Yeah.
you're not whole.
Yes.
Conscience tells you.
And it feels that way, right? So listen to that
But
and
the
then.
work then is to
I
identify,
don't-
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
To figure out what it is that.
And
And then there's that gap. There's that gap of like, I'm not whole right now. That's what I've learned to
Yes.
experience is
That
when
reaction.
you feel negative about something and you
Pounds.
called it, sorry, I don't wanna take away
One,
from
one,
what.
one meeting is they say.
Yeah, I don't wanna take away
In the
from what
union movement.
Teresa's
go ahead.
saying, sorry. Yeah.
No, I was just saying that breaking the rules, I had a similar reaction. The people crossing that would probably drive me crazy too, but when I am trying to cross the street, right, it's a green light, and the car, instead of parking in front of where the zebra passes are, it's in the middle or takes the space, I
Blocking
get
the box.
furious. Because, I'm supposed to cross through there now, it's putting me in danger, I gotta go circle around them. I understand in Midtown Manhattan at lunch. But it happens like in my neighborhood when I'm running for Long Island Rail in the morning. Why are they doing this? They're in such a hurry to be ahead and they're blocking me literally from my passage. I usually
Well,
give them a
I
very
mean,
dirty
as
look.
was pointed out earlier,
Very
if
dirty
these,
look.
if they're violating the traffic law, then it's probably okay to be and righteously angry at such a thing, because they're in the wrong. But I think we're trying to focus on these negative traits. In other words, if you are, what negative trait do you think?
Anger, I'm very angry at them.
But anger is not always negative. Anger can be positive. The famous Jesus throwing over the tables of money
Yeah.
changers
Yeah,
angrily because they were violating this, you're bringing the money into the temple.
I think, tell me if I understand correctly, Joel, like you were saying that you're overreacting.
Right,
So that's the trait that you were talking about, the overreaction to that type of situation.
yeah, I mean, so I see this behavior a lot. I'm in Midtown and they're, usually it's people delivering food. And I don't know, some of them, people are delivering food illegal, some are, have, properly
most of them
registered.
illegal.
And some of them are illegal, and then it occurred to me,
Driving without insurance.
the only way that they've been able to survive
Exactly.
is to not follow the rules. If they followed the rules, they would never be here.
Yeah,
So, and I'm sure that applies to our ancestors as well. How did they get here? They had to manipulate the situation to create opportunities for themselves. So to try to have compassion and understanding for this behavior that I find upsetting.
right.
Yeah.
And then he's
I
taking a
don't
tip.
know the
If
world.
he
Yes,
doesn't
he's trying to make
deliver,
money. He's,
not gonna get tip.
yeah,
But I
he's
mean, the
sending most of the
negative,
money
the
home.
negative
Yeah.
traits, are you saying that impatience is that?
Well, it's a lot, I think it's a lot of
It's
things.
not
Cases like
It's a lot,
I'm
it's a lot of
impatient.
things, Alan, it's anxiousness, being afraid of the environment, not trusting the universe. Trusting
Well, and it's
God.
also a version of what Teresa just said. He's in your space.
Yes,
So that's very
Yeah,
common. You see that,
Well, the guy-
road rage, you see
No.
that people, if they're walking on the sidewalk, they cuss, but people don't like it if somebody's in their space. That's because we're individualized at this level of consciousness. We're separated and individualized. So we can't yet take two fishes and make a whole basket like Jesus did, right? If I eat two fish, you get none, right? That's the mentality, the consciousness level that we're all functioning in. So if somebody's in your space, then they're taking that from you. That's how we
Right.
all react. But that's just, see, one of the great things about Eckhart Tolle is like you can't expect anybody or yourself to act beyond their current level of consciousness.
Right.
You can't.
That's right.
If I expect Addison not to bark when people come in, I'm gonna be disappointed, very disappointed.
Amen.
Constantly. She can't do it.
Yeah.
We can't, we are separated, individualized aspects of ego conscious. Our consciousness is identified with the form
Mhm.
right now. That's the level of manifestation that we're in.
well,
It's not a very high level of manifestation, which is also kind of like humbling all of that.
Well, I want
It's
to add one
average.
thing to
It's
this,
average.
and that is the fact that our ego tends to be driven to apply for world change, for things. Let's fix what's wrong. I know how to fix what's wrong.
Everybody
But
thinks
the
that they're smart
problem,
span in
the
the world.
problem with that approach is it divorces you from the emotional journey. So the best thing to do is divorce the two. Look, you can act out of righteous anger and do the thing and put the ticket on someone's windshield and whatever it is. You could, give them the finger if you so desire. But whatever it is,
Or a dirty
that's
look.
not the emotional journey. The emotional journey here is not about identifying with the ego
It's to find the
and
positive aspect
recognizing the
of your
positive
emotions, of
aspect.
your negative.
So
Yes.
our ego drive to apply fixes to the world, we're not all activists. Stop it. Stop thinking you're a freaking activist. You're not an activist. Okay? You're on an emotional journey and you have a contribution. But that's part of it. It's divorcing those two. I
Yeah,
think.
what
were
do
you
you
gonna say,
think,
Sue?
Sue?
Can we slow it down a little bit? I'm just trying to understand this interpretation. So
Yeah.
like if we have I think it's perfectly fine to have a reaction not to allow someone to put you in danger. And, but over where you want to kill that person, is probably the negative, excuse for a negative emotion.
Right.
So then we said that those negative emotions were projections of aspects of ourselves that we had we trade positive.
Yes,
Or ignored, not.
ignored it, right.
Ignored it.
So I mean, the energy, I suppose,
Let it get.
the energy that you might use embody to kill could be the same energy that you use to positively confront and support
Right.
the best in another person, rather than the same energy, which on one hand would be the killing energy, could be transformed into the supporting or saving, aggressive, positive aggression.
To be
Why
constructed
do we
way.
reject that in ourselves and then force the projection?
Why do we reject it in ourselves? Right, it's because I suppose of our images, our long
Nobody
conclusions,
wants to see the negative.
what
in
we
themselves.
believe, the ego believes that the negative traits will win, will somehow get what we want, I suppose.
But who wants to see negative stuff about themselves? It's painful. Not fun.
Also, like the guy
Yeah,
talks in the beginning of the lecture about
It's actually
the critical, right, the critical nature of
Like that, a natural thing to want to find all the
Right.
dirt. Your-
the extreme reluctance that we have
That's
to
the,
face these parts of ourselves.
where does that come
I
from?
was raised by a very outspoken woman, so I guess I'm used to it.
No,
But I
I'm
think
sorry,
that-
Joe, go ahead, Sid.
Because we're rejecting the positive in ourselves.
Yes,
So the
Yes,
positive
yes.
of that, and then
you're throwing the
resulting
baby out the back.
and
door.
the
Yes.
hatred coming out. So if you take the hatred and take it back into the self, you say, oh, I'm rejecting the ability to stand for truth.
Yes,
To.
Yes.
exactly.
To love another.
to,
Yes.
You know, to be
Faith
strong.
and
about
love
it.
is probably the.
To be confident.
Maybe
So
you
I'm
have.
wondering,
Yeah.
why do we reject in ourselves
Maybe you love
initially
them.
those positive aspects, thereby necessitating the projection?
Well, that's a good question. What do you say to
I
that,
think we
Tracy?
reject the positive in ourselves. I think what happens is it gets distorted. And then when we see it, it's manifesting as the more of the negative traits. We're fine seeing the great stuff about ourselves.
Well, I think there's another part of it
Well,
too.
from aggrandizement, that's true, but I think what Sid said is very real.
No,
and
there's
very
also
true.
an inertia that
There's
people
a
have.
part that we feel we're annihilating ourselves when we accept ourselves as complete and whole.
Yeah.
Right, that the
So I think it's
negativity gives
true
us
what you're
individuality.
saying.
The
Very
negativity
true.
somehow gives us individuality
Yes.
that we don't
right.
have.
Because we have
in the
opinions
positive,
then about
we have
how other
opinions.
people are screwed up, right?
And
That they messed up.
The ego loves that. I'm
The
very-
ego loves when we can differentiate,
Yeah. that's
but
all
when
it
we
cares
can
about.
say that we're all one, the ego goes, well, what the
Yeah.
hell am I around for?
Right,
I don't know why
ego
I'm
doesn't
even
like
here suddenly.
right, because the its life depends on being different.
It wants to be special,
It
right?
doesn't
Isn't
want
that what it wants?
Well, it's even different.
Different, well,
Even
yeah,
different,
that's
they'll
all I
say
meant, yeah,
negative.
that's what I meant.
That's why if you can't find, some people get like constantly sick.
Yeah, it's all
You know,
comparison.
It's just they want, the ego is a separate entity that wants to survive like like any entity.
But think of the thing.
We're
that
not
wants-
rejecting the lower self outright, it's our negative ego that's rejecting.
Oh, no, it's,
That's
no,
just, that's
so the
that's
lower,
semantics, I think.
yes, I mean,
Right?
the lower self is not.
It's our
But we don't want to
conceptualization.
No,
admit.
but the lower self
Yeah.
is more like the child self. I don't think we really, that's slightly different than this bundle of negative traits that we all have, right? Child self, the lower self, the child is the child self.
The lower self.
Well, the lower
It
self,
can
remember
be.
our
Well,
our last
because,
lecture?
You know, you give our
It's the
grand,
same thing.
Remember the last
well.
lecture?
it is all-
That the lower self is the climate of egotism,
Yes,
egocentricity.
That might exist in the child.
it does, maybe because they.
It exists in the adult self, yeah.
But it cannot, like, take what's like an ice cream cone and you make it, well, I don't want this flavor. I mean, I guess that's negative, but it's just childlike. I don't wanna, I want the red popsicle you give me, no, I want the orange, right? Is that really negative or childlike?
Well, the guy goes into immediate desire
Difference.
fulfillment. That's
Yeah.
exactly what the guy goes
What do
into
you
toward
think,
the end
Teresa?
is what
Like
the
when,
next.
when the
Different
little
levels
kid,
of-
Okay,
the little grandchild, you know, asks for a great popsicle, you go get it, and then they throw it on the floor and they said, I want mine.
Yeah.
Or they can even throw it on the
But
floor,
it's
they
very
just give it
normal.
back and say, no, I don't want this, I
But
want this.
Tracy, it's very
Is that-
normal. It's
That's
very
normal, but is that negative?
For a
To the
certain
baby?
year of age.
I don't think so. Why would we?
Yeah, it's
I
very
think it's
normal.
just childlike.
Well, I think there are probably negative attitudes embedded within that, like envy,
Well,
you know, possessiveness. What is that? But anyway, let me go back. Yeah, go ahead, Kev.
Go ahead.
I want to go back to stand by.
Go ahead.
You know, it's so this I'm having such a deja vu moment here because you remember Sid in so many of our Pathwork groups that you couldn't get a word in edgewise. No, me. I have an insight about this. I want to talk about back in the day. Right, Barbara?
Yeah, I know. I just loved what you did about that reference to last month's lecture, the climate of self-centeredness, because it seems like it's a very big key to all of these negative traits that, not getting what you want, or, it's all about yourself rather than the larger.
Yeah.
But
So
anyway.
I want to hear from Beverly. I'm calling you as usual. Beverly and Susan, your thoughts about these negative traits and the positive energy behind them? Any thoughts?
I'm having a really hard time following.
We got to get back to basics. Like when you talk, Joel, about that feeling that you had where you get angry when somebody's violating the traffic laws, you said it comes from a number of different kinds of emotions, one of them being anxiety. Now, the guide says here, anxiety is a distortion of caution and awareness of something somewhere being amiss. Specifically, in the human state, anxiety is always a sign of repression. Such a state is a gauge for you that tells you that there is something you do not wish to see that makes you anxious. So in this case, is it that you do not want to understand or connect with the danger that exists?
Yeah, that's a good, yes, I think that's part of it, Alan, but it's. I'm not trusting in what I really know. Even into that I could get hurt by it. I mean, Marion was going over the life, right? I don't know. So yes, I do think that it's clear and other aspects.
Well, Beverly, you understand the main concept. We're talking about that. Aren't these interesting examples that the guide gives about the positive aspects, like competitiveness, self-centeredness, wanting to be the center of attention? Now that's a negative trait, right? Okay. Says self-centeredness is a direct distortion of seeking your inner center. If you're centered within your divine self, then vanity and egotism stop. Vanity and egotism exist if the search for the divine nucleus is applied to the separated ego. Ambitiousness and competitiveness are a distortion of the inner movement to create the best that you can be. But again, when you put into the service of the separated ego, it becomes an endeavor that sets oneself into opposition to another self. So talking about self-centeredness is you focus on the self, but on the wrong part of the self, on the ego instead of the spiritual self or the intuitive self. So that's the positive aspect of self-centeredness. Depends on
Makes
how.
sense.
Yeah, I think
Not a rejection.
Well, what you seem to be saying is that you kind of grope for how to apply self-centeredness, but you're doing it the wrong way. Instead of applying it to your inner core, apply it to your ego. You get self-centered about your ego. But the quality of looking within and being centered on the self is a positive thing.
But we're not rejecting. Having problem, we're manifest as a projection of.
Very true.
That's involved, right? And I think the guy says here, when also in this lecture, it is a few, as if you were saying, instead of saying, how can I be the best that I can be, the best of myself, you know, my potential self, you twist it around and say, how can I be better than others?
Exactly.
You know what I
That's
mean?
right.
So you want to be better than others instead of focusing on how you can be, you know, the best you can be yourself.
Susan, what do you
So
think?
it's competition.
always like to compare.
Yeah, actually, relative to what Juan was just saying, also, um, I, I can look at it as I can't. No, I can look at it. I go to this feeling place sometimes, like I can't be the best I am because this person is preventing me from doing that because of their behavior. So when I'm able to recognize that, and very often it's about judgment. I feel like I'm being judged by them, and they don't see who I am. And there's this whole discussion about judgment from the first question, um, and um, and I see it for myself. So when I turn it around and I'm not judging others and I'm looking at my own behavior, I I then am able to see why that's so hard for me to do. Um, hold on a minute. I'm just gonna. um, I'll prevail with forgiveness and understanding and readiness to understand deeper connections, not to judge in an ultimate and rejecting way. Um, I, I feel like they're not seeing me, but on the other hand, when I take a look, I seeing me? I really struggle with that. And in order for me to see who I am, I have to acknowledge the negative aspects first, you know, um, so that I can transmute them.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Joel.
I think, Susan, it's also extremely important for us to acknowledge our good qualities.
I can't hear Joel.
I can't either.
Oh,
It's really important for us to acknowledge our good qualities. Without that, we're never going to keep on the path and continue to work at the negative quality. Because it's going to become too overwhelming. Self-acknowledgement is essential. That's the base for looking at transformation of the negative. So that when Tracy says, oh, you're so selfish. If I hear she doesn't love it, which is typical when somebody says it's just negative feedback, criticism. I'm not going to be able to hear what she's saying when she's like, oh, I love you, and I feel so much more to do something that you can do a better job. You see what I'm saying? Very important that we see our God self, our manifestation, our past one, individual Christ being, with music. Sid's gift as a father, a grandfather, brother, Alan's gift for being able to share, to put all this complicated information and address it and give us a summary, right? And we each have these gifts. And that's the base from which you can really say, oh, you know, what do you mean you're ready to kill some poor guy that's riding a bicycle down the street? What's the matter with you? Right?
Yeah, I agree. And, I also would just back on the fact, yeah, because and when people give you feedback, I think I just got my evaluation again, right? And it was 90% positive. You know, I'm terrific at what I do, blah blah blah. People are working with me, but because there's no to bless me, people then and some very helpful things like, you know, I remember I snapped in one of the meetings, you know, that somebody just completely unresponsive and asking the same question. And I sent an agenda explaining everything coverage, right? And I said, does anybody ever read what I sent? I put that in evolution, like, I'm angry, I was, and she said, nothing angry, she says, aggressive. That my behavior is aggressive and something to that extent. And I went on artificial intelligence, I Google aggressive, looked at the confidence evaluation. So taking myself and said, well, who is with artificial intelligence about aggressive? I'm a teacher, I do not agree with that assessment. You know, and I said, I mean, it's not the time, at times due to pressure and stuff like this, I think it's aggressive. But then, you know, when I actually submitted it, I said, you know what, I am aggressive. I'm going to kick his ass. I really want to give it to him. Well, I don't know if we can.
We all
remember.
agree.
Well,
aggressive.
aggression, obviously, that makes it positive and negative aggression, but it seems to me, not to go judgmental or anything, if you're describing being irritable. If you're
Yeah,
irritable, is that a negative trait? What would the positive aspect of that? Discerning, perhaps. You know, you are also attentive to what's going on. Am I going to make direction?
Yes.
With finding a positive, and the energy of irritability. What's the positive origin?
Saying everything is perfect. Wanting everything like that's perfection. And being imitated because it's not
Striving for perfection.
striving.
Ready to be respected.
Yeah, I wouldn't maybe respectful.
Prepared.
Preparation. Preparation. Coming prepared.
So I mean, my thinking is that this lecture gives us the tool to, in that moment, say, look, I'm feeling irritable, but what's the real feeling behind it? Why am I irritated? And then is able to connect with the positive energy, then the irritability loses its feeling of separate that people won't react against.
No, I I'm actually very soon. But you know, but I gave it to him like, I went on artificial intelligence. I think that's aggressive in meetings or something like this, and it's really nasty what she said. And I said, well, I don't think that's me, you know. And then I submitted it, and I said to myself, you know what? Actually, I haven't had aggression.
I think this
Was before, but now it was.
Teresa, just one simple thing that I've heard repeatedly, and this is part of it, is your acknowledgement that the emotional journey does not need to always match your response to the world situation. Your situation in the world can be clear and calculated for what's necessary within your job, and it's all that. Push back where you want to, where you don't want to. You don't need to throw the emotion into it. Your emotional journey is what I think the guy is really talking about. Not talking about your review, even though I know that's the application. But that application, once it's in, then it becomes about self-examination. And you did that. That's that's the beauty of what you just said. I mean, there's a huge beauty. It's like a flower of what you just said. Because when I hear you speak about this situation, I hear self-reflection and I hear self-acceptance. Because even if you're not where you may want to be at some point, you may want to change it. Who knows? Maybe you want to stay that way for a while. That's all good. Yeah. I mean, that it's a positive towards aggression. Not, I mean, I think the final lecture is about the positive aggression.
And you wanna know something
Right.
funny, Kevin, if it was a man, it would be like, oh, he conducted the meeting with.
Well,
power and
right,
purpose.
exactly.
If it's a lady and just did, hey, I read what the hell said. And I'm
know that.
aggressive.
But
you
I
know?
think that Teresa, being in these groups, I feel like people get that about you. They do that. You process it. You don't just react.
That's a bullshit.
You are,
Thank you.
there's something in you that deeply receives and transforms and benefits from the feedback you get. In other words, you're not taking, you don't take it personally, but you're able to zoom in.
So she does take it personally first, and then she zooms out and she's
Yeah.
able to look at it. Because the last time you shared something, it was also similar. It's something about work, because it's often about work, and then you got mad, you got defended, and then you're like, ooh, I think this is right. Remember, she was right there, and I remember being so impressed. I was so impressed because you started off natural reaction, which is, F you, I'm not like that, and blah, blah, and then you just zoomed out and you looked at yourself, and maybe you went back over the notes or something. It was about a meeting, it was definitely a work, you were sitting right there. It was something about like you went back and you got the notes of the meeting or something, maybe like, that's true, I did do that. So you're able to, reflect. Now, I don't think you should beat yourself up about the initial reaction. I mean, I couldn't find some cupcake. I was making for our son's birthday. I was making him some cupcakes. And I couldn't find and I knew I left him there, and I got mad for him. And okay, I got mad for him. I didn't. And then I thought, well, that's pretty silly. You can't buy your cupcake. They go buy some more. But so we're all going to do that. But what I find with the pathwork is how long these plant. Fan the flame. Or say, okay, I just lit another raging fire, and you start to put it out. You start to speed up this. So because a lot of people, once they get like that, they don't get out of it.
Yeah, no, because they
Ever.
identify only with that single
Right.
self. That's the problem.
So they would still be sitting here tonight going,
Once you Teresa,
I'm feeling really good about that. Self-justified, So you don't you have that initial reaction, but at least the last couple of times I've heard you tell stories about work, they're all very similar situations with work. You zoom out pretty quickly. To me, that's pretty impressive.
I think I was mad. There's something to it. They're right. I have this second. But I think that everything is in everybody. And then the environment, you're saying, your Mother Teresa, the environment brings it up. Yeah. And what I'm trying to convey to my bosses is like this: we appreciate certain things about me because I didn't very well, but you bring out those nasty qualities in me. Because we are not managing, because we are doing this, doing that. But then what Kevin is saying, if I didn't have it in
it's
me,
not worth pointing the finger. That's
Well,
what
no,
I'm
it's worth
saying.
pointing the
It's
finger.
not
I
worth
am not
saying
feeling
that. It's worth saying at least that those are in me, and there's some positive qualities about those quote negative things.
Right.
You realize I have to take more initiatives when I'm this way, or you realize I hold people accountable when they committed to something because of this nature in me that you find reprehensible.
What you just said. So he doesn't cause it, because nobody's
No,
causing
he doesn't
anything.
cause it, but you have positive qualities.
It's in you. He's triggering it.
Or you're allowing it to trigger even better.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to go one step further.
Nobody could bring it out.
Oh, easily. That's so true.
Well,
Right.
That
can I
is
add
so
something?
true.
that's true.
So the way that I reframe and probably not because it is in the definition of Catholic. But I call that the lower, like black and white. Black's was the right. We have upper, we have lower. So lower means it's therefore it's negative. But I think of the lower self as my developing self.
Yes.
Quality belonging.
Darkness.
That's what I do.
It points things out.
It's out.
Cutting
That's why
edge.
you have to love it. That's all I said last time, remember?
That's
Love it.
That's right.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's
Wait,
gonna help.
wait, Carl,
Yeah,
wait,
And also
Carl.
love that man that brought that to your attention. That's what's great.
Love that boss.
We live in a reflective universe, right? We live in a reflective. So what you're seeing out there, that's why others are such gifts to us. It mirrors exactly what's in you. So therefore, you don't have to go on the center. You can see exactly what's in you. So every single thing in your environment, every person you write is mirroring back what is inside of Teresa.
And that's what Susan is.
Yes, and that's the
Okay.
gift that
was
we
saying
all
she
give
made
each other
feel-
by pissing each other off.
Sid, you were gonna say,
Yeah, this is better off
Yeah.
for good,
So that we can see. Oh, I see that I need to look at this, oh, I see about this, and pointing directly to where I need to go inside. It's always about inside. But I
we're
can't
good,
see.
hold on.
I was just thinking, with yourself, so didn't you say that it's not the diagram, it pulls out behind you,
Yeah,
and the higher self is in the middle? Center, the lower self is.
yeah, well, I think that the diagram was, the mask is the outermost layer. And the second outermost layer is the lower self, and the innermost layer is
Nice.
Right, the lower self obscures, but it's, the lower self is closer to the center than the mask. Because the mask is deceptive and false. The mask tries to paper over.
Just one point.
The lower
that
self.
Sid mentioned, diagram that you mentioned is exactly what helped me take this lecture and see that every single negative quality can be masked. Or positive quality can be masked by a negative manifestation by the ego or by the lower self. It's again that complete circle. I think we've talked about one energy, right? There's nothing that leaves you or ultimately comes to you in a sense. You are whole already. And it's yeah, well, it's similar to this. But there's actually a diagram that I drew up that was similar to that. But still, even not just that. I think it was Susan's. Yeah.
Yeah, do we understand this concept of the mask, the lower self? And outer self?
It covers over completely.
The mask is the outermost layer. Because the mask is not honest. The lower self is honest.
The mask wants to mask the
The
lower
mask
self.
wants to. So you can almost see this distortion at the core of the sun, where the beautiful energy is coming up and it's getting distorted then by the lower self, and the mask self is piling on the distortion and masking the distortion to
appear better.
To appear
Because
better.
if you
That's the idealized
show
self.
your hate, nobody's gonna like you.
Right.
That's right.
And you're better. than you
So,
are.
so you're like, well, I have this hate, but I can't show anybody yet.
Also,
And for a long time,
So you
people
put on
we
top
are
of it this
masked
love,
self.
this.
Right. And you know, allegedly it takes like 50,000 years for light from the center of the sun to actually get to the outside. Fun fact. Yeah, it takes like a huge amount of time.
You're talking
Because-
like helium atom or something?
I'm talking about the radiated photons. Because apparently there's so much energy bouncing around there that there's a long time for these things to make their way out.
I just wanted to go back to Susan.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because that really resonated with me. You were saying, and I feel like people I'm not seeing. Am I seeing myself? And I really have discovered that recently, where I feel like I'm not being seen. It's like, well, you can never get satisfaction or the whatever you need from the outside in. So it doesn't matter if they see you or don't see you, but it really has to come from inside. So that's the mirroring, right? Like, oh, I'm not being seen, or what's going on inside.
Yes.
Or I know if I get. That's right. That's right. So, but I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, all right, Susan, what do you think? Anyone else? Beverly, Barbara? We'll let the people out there in cyberspace.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Next time you see them, you're gonna be really different.
Yeah, Beverly?
I'm having a really hard time hearing you guys.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah, me too. That's why I turned off my screen because I thought it would be better. I thought it was an internet thing, but for some reason, it's never happened like this where it goes in and out. I don't know if it's an air conditioning thing or internet thing.
Yeah, I'm having the same problem too.
maybe, the Wi-Fi in the city. I could,
It's from the heat. It's from the heat. That's why Mary's not here. I had horrible Wi-Fi yesterday.
well, I will tell everybody that all the audio is nice and clear, I think, on the recording. So we can always listen to the recording later.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Not very well.
Yeah.
So we could
So,
move them.
I'll come a little closer, maybe that'll help. So Teresa, I have a follow-up question. I was thinking about this. I had difficulty with my brother for many years. And what came to me was that they see me very differently than I see myself.
Yes.
And then, so then I said, all right, well then how do they see me? Right? What are the negative aspects that they see about me or in me, or that they experience with me that I don't see, that I don't want to see, right? And then I just said, okay, so they see me differently than I see myself. It's all right, but I acknowledge that I don't have to insist the way I see me, how they see me. It's okay.
Right, but the next step from that would be where discernment comes in, right? Because they could be projecting onto you their own stuff, and it's not true.
Well, of course.
Or
Yeah.
Or they do see something that you are hiding from yourself. There's that four quadrant thing where there's, you see and everyone sees and no one sees. And then there's the other two quarters where people see things in you that you don't see, and you see things in yourself that you don't share. Nobody else sees. So they could see something. That's the gift. If they're seeing something in you that is hidden, that you are hiding from yourself, that's the question. Are they?
Right.
Because I'm going through this with my siblings right now too. I feel very similar. Like,
Well, on the opposite
they don't
side,
see me the way I.
With projection though, Teresa, like not so good, right? I mean, if they project onto you.
No, I know, but
actually
it's not
very hard to
true.
It's
It's
always
not
hard to
true.
take when you believe. Where's a Juan? But you're not a Juan, and you're not a Teresa. And I just want to say that again and again. I think not only this spirituality, but a lot of these courses are all pointing to the fact that you're much grander than just this single what is it? Incarnation.
Temporary
This
manifestation.
is a temporary manifestation of where you're at.
This is family of the closest friend.
Oh, I'm not saying the
And what
emotional.
you're
I'm not saying the
projecting
emotional reaction is not
Something
warranted.
on you, it's lots of people who think that you are. That's the hardest thing. I mean,
Well, I'm over
no,
that.
because the family.
It doesn't have to be the
It
heart.
doesn't have to
No,
be.
the
No.
family is like this, but I
It can be, but
I did the thing with my best friends, where basically, I was single at that time and the marriage wasn't doing too well. And somehow the husband got very nice with me. I think it is a friendship that you always looking together. was learning with me. She not only she basically projected every single insecurity, hatred, whatever the hell was wrong with the man.
Sounds like a typical woman.
Like a fury, like a hyena. And it was years ago, and I got so appalled and so upset, I could never be friends with her again. And I was just passing by their house today because I was going to the America, I used to live in that area. I'm so interested, I was one of my best friends, one of them. And I consider him my family. But after she did that, I could not, the light of me, I could not consider him anymore. And we came to this country, I couldn't do it together. As I was from college. But anyway, today I saw somebody working in the garden, just like, I saw a friend of mine, and he laughed at me. And I was like, oh, I'm supposed to love that woman. I loved her. I met her in college. She was my next door neighbor. She was a smoker because I lived one year in my room. I used to go and smoke with her. We were like best friends since the first day of college, for God's sake. We lived together, second year in college anyway. I love that woman. I loved her, and they loved her. It just not time passed. The love hit me like a bruise together. I was like, oh yeah, I really love her. But because of that rejection, everything was wrong with the marriage. Everything that was there, and the husband maybe I didn't even see it, but maybe she saw it, whatever. It was just so painful. She projected this very dysfunction that many in the relationship, like in my influence. Everything was possible for marriage. You know, I'm just going to tell them not happy. And I was really, I love these people. I wish they were only them and feelings. But the projection is so painful to me because it's so unfair. I didn't know the husband, I didn't know to be jealous, I didn't, none of it was true. I love these people. To this day, I don't think I'm beginning to friends with them. Well, because they are projecting on me. Also, because they're not friends. They don't really love me like I love them, but I really love these people. I love them. I would do anything. If I really do make it easy on the tasks, if you know that it's there, it's keeping gardening, just to get them busy. I love these people. Like I love them. But they, I guess they yeah, that was it. I loved them and they ripped my heart out because they didn't really love me back. And they projected their shit on me.
But that's the question.
Yeah. I know you have to work the shares and think of yeah, they became very related. They got into real estate, they became very changed them. When they became very related, changed them completely into somebody who understand. But in any way, that love thing, I was saying, yeah, but that projection, which is so, so
Well, anytime any of us is in our defense, not our true self, but our defense, whether it's depression or withdrawal or the love life, the defenses and boundaries, it hurts all of us. It hurts not just the, the people that are on the receiving end of that mask or defense, but it also hurts us. So that's where, Sid's question is, can you love you if they don't love you back? They're in their defense, and their defense is to withdraw or to, be a king body or I don't know, it's really hard to do, but
the hurt dissipates even further. There's no scenario in this earth that we're going to you that could based upon what we look at the outside, but that is that will ever take you out to that day. That's what you know yourself to be. But all I'm saying is because you know yourself to be something higher than that, you believe yourself to be something higher and able to be heard. I'm not saying to divorce, I'm not saying to push to and not experience the hurt on force. I'm not saying it's not about forcing it away. It's not about involvement. It's not about just that. But maybe I didn't see myself as God as I truly. And if I could show you how I see myself, then maybe what I define becomes like that. I'd actually be qualified in a different way, and I might not be seeking the same pleasure house that I used to do to qualify the person as a friend, or a special, or a lover, or a special need, or whatever. It could go on so many different layers.
But then you would accept that about it.
Yes, amazingly. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that, but isn't that awful to experience sometimes because we lose ourselves? We lose our ego.
Who were some of the people that Jesus was the closest with? Tax collector. Tax collector. What did I say? So I think, and the poor and the sick. And so there was a message for me, right? That touch about it. You don't hear you.
All right, okay, so, where do we stand, ladies and gentlemen? All right, everybody, hey, one conversation. Like they say. I don't know. Do you, now, does anyone want to ask a question about a specific subject of, positive aspects of negative traits? So let's just be quiet for a couple minutes and ask ourselves what we need. Anything else, you know, that somebody wants to seek inspiration about? Yeah, go ahead.
I think there's a lot. The reason I say that is because it goes into a lot of specifics from a lot of questions about specific traits. And those specific traits may or may not speak to one of our motivation. I say this mostly because of things that I've learned through the Michael teachings, but there are many different energies that we can manifest. And it's very similar to what Miriam would say for the 3 personality types. I just want to say, jumping into a specific question and a specific trait is not always the best way to find ourselves, because we can easily see ourselves in many of these sometimes. And the reactivity of them, and then look at anger and see what it said in this lecture. So I think it's a complicated problem. I think it's simpler if you just look at the total whole, feel what you're feeling in a given situation, put it into concise words, as the guide has said in many other words, and then from there, use that to determine the next step. If whatever one of these questions that resonates with you on your own self-search, then I think it's a useful process. But if we start quizzing ourselves about specific items where anger comes up or where we think we're anxious or fear, it's hard to get there because it's very chaotic. Okay, there's a lot of things we experience. Search, daily review. I just want to go back to it. There are many energies, and we all look. Sometimes we want. Sometimes we feel unworthy. Sometimes we
You know, can I say, I'm sorry, is someone talking? I can't really hear very well. I wanted to say something.
Just me, doesn't matter.
No, sit.
What? Oh, you were? I couldn't hear a word.
Sorry. I was just saying.
How about this? How about this?
Oh my God, Barbara, how are you? I was just I was just saying, he was saying that you mind fuck yourself if you go into all the different separate things in the lecture.
Right.
So I was thinking, like, I know I have an inner climate at times, and there's a constellation around that goes to that inner climate. And that inner climate has specific attitudes that I would use in terms of the lecture.
Mhm, mhm.
Once you find that climate, then you can apply.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
that's,
once you find the climate, you can apply it to the lecture, but it's hard situationally because it's so easy in individual situations to misjudge what you think you're doing sometimes, right? It's easier if you go into your inner self and feel through multiple experiences instead of being reactive to a single experience.
Well,
That's all I
what
say.
I'm thinking is like sometimes, you know, people have particular traits that keep dogging them. You know, like they kind of like my sister. This is funny. I got two sisters. My younger sister, she calls me like every night and she goes, I can't shake being regretful about bad choices I made. I keep remembering things I did and saying what a bad thing it was. I acted in the way I did and I didn't make another choice. I didn't go down a different route. So that seems to be kind of trait that one could look at in the light of this lecture. Like, what is the positive aspect of regretting? Something obsessing about regretting. And right, maybe it's partly discernment, you know, of understanding. Maybe it's the quality of zeroing in on something and looking at it critically. What do you think?
I would just add one thing to that and just say that you or any of us cannot discern other people's motivation ever.
No.
Okay, you are discerning your
All we can
own
do-
motivation
all we can
based
do-
upon their activity.
Yes.
And so when you guide someone else to do self-search, they have to determine their motivation and their underlying energy
But
current.
you can have certain perceptions.
You get certain perceptions.
Share with them.
Yes, you can. Yeah, that's
Right,
right.
right.
Whoa.
You-
Very good. I wanna go back. to that.
Wait a
I
minute,
wanna-
but
I wanna
obviously
go
the
back
guide
to
is exempt, certain, present company accepted. The guide obviously can correctly anticipate or and get behind what somebody's.
He tends to,
distortions
yes.
is.
Well, the
I've
guy's
seen
not
many
a
places
party.
he tends to.
He did pretty well in those, I think the
Yeah,
answer.
but I'm just saying humans wise.
Yeah, I'm sorry, stand by.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Joel.
Alan, so your sister is coming to you every night, or almost every night,
Yes,
in pain,
yes.
and she's coming to you for help.
She said, I can't stop regretting things that I
Okay,
did.
I got that. Now, what do you say to her to help her? How do you apply all of your knowledge and experience to your sister?
I tell her,
When-
that- okay. I tell her that what she is showing is a lack of faith in the potentials and creativity that exists in this moment. And that so much exists right now and right here that can be manifested. In a sense, she's denying the reality of creativity in the present by dwelling on the past.
Okay, now let me ask you this. So how would it be to ask her, what would it take to forgive yourself for the mistakes you feel you have made?
Yeah.
Well, that's a thought, Joel. I mean, you know, as far as I'm concerned, I don't really understand regret and I don't really understand forgiveness personally. Because nothing that happened in the past was anything but a product of my own choices. And all the factors came together to create every single thing that happened in my
Self-responsibility.
life.
Yeah.
So I've got to say that, look, at every moment of my life, I had responsibility for what I
But
experienced.
not everybody's there.
So I'm
You
saying,
can still have regret over.
but I'm saying that,
your choice.
not really.
Not really. I feel you completely when you just said that. I know that feeling.
I'm saying that
The
Have you
choice
been-
of-
if you
Was
didn't
the-
make the right choice,
Yep.
it was because you
That's
didn't
all
make
you
the
do.
right choice. You didn't want to make the right.
Exactly what, I
You
had
didn't
this
have-
conversation once,
Right.
exactly this.
You
Ask
didn't,
go to bar. You're
And
gonna
this
make
would
this.
be a very very helpful lesson to you,
Yeah.
because life is a school, so when
And
you
it
make
leads
that
you.
choice, that's all you were able to make at that time.
Exactly.
Right, and
It's a
forgiveness,
lesson.
That's how I believe.
forgiveness is another,
It's also a
Thing.
lesson. Was there anything positive that came out of that experience?
well, of course.
What does
There,
regret mean?
what does regret mean? Well, that's a good question. I mean, I interpreted it to mean that she's saying to me that she could have had more pleasure and fulfillment if she had chosen a different road.
Yeah, looking presently with unfulfillment on something in the
Exactly.
past.
Right,
That's all.
I can't get fulfilled in the present and I
But
blew my
but the
chance.
the gap is that you are not the same person as you were at that time. And so therefore, we talk about forgiveness of self, but the problem is that we all conceptualize ourself as being a single entity throughout time. But Alan and I, to be honest, when you just said what you said, we're not the same entity throughout time.
No.
We're always changing, and you've recognized that very deeply. And others could judge you for recognizing that deeply and say, well, that's just ignoring the hurt in your past, you idiot. You know, and I've heard that to me, like, oh, you're just ignoring the past. No, I'm not ignoring the past. I was a different person. I can accept that I was a different person in the
And it
past.
led you to where you're at here.
And there's zero regrets,
Yeah.
even
I
for
don't,
the
I don't, right,
mistakes.
I don't believe in regrets.
I
And
don't
when
believe
you,
in regrets
when
in
you
the
make
sense
a
of that.
choice, you can
It's
acknowledge.
just mistakes.
And you can say, I made a choice then.
Yeah.
That I wouldn't make now.
Exactly.
And you say, I regret the fact I made a bad choice. But I understand
Yeah.
why I made a
that
bad choice.
I wouldn't want to go back and change it. Why would I go back and
Right,
change
you just,
it? It all led to here. This
it all,
was
where we are,
But
right. I'm
I
sorry.
think, well, just one thing I wanted to say is if she's saying this to you, it sounds a lot like there's some like self-hatred or not accepting of the self that that it's a part of like embrace all those decisions you made because that makes you who you are and love the growth of that being.
That's absolutely correct. Yes, I think there is a lot of anger at the self-hatred, self-rejection.
Yeah. And
I think that that's true.
The attitude towards
Lack of self-acceptance.
her attitude towards her regrets. It's the same attitude that caused the things that she regretted.
Maybe, that's an interesting.
That's a very good,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
because she didn't
Yeah.
have self-acceptance and self-love, so
In the first place.
she rejected herself and made the decision that were based on self-rejection or self depreciation.
You
rather
guys get
than
that?
self-acceptance and self-love.
It's a distorted self-focus. So she's.
Right, it's
so
a
she's-
form of egotism.
Well, it's
Or
a
the lower
form of-
self.
It
It's a
is,
form of
right.
the lower self being self-indulgent,
Seeking attention.
giving herself attention
For me.
about her
For me.
faults instead of just accepting them, accept what happened, right?
Yes,
And say, well, wait a minute, I'm a lot more than my faults, I'm a lot more than my mistakes, I'm a lot more
desire
than
to
my
remain
regrets.
stuck, yeah.
Yeah,
The
It's a-
famous
it's-
victim trip.
it's inability to let go.
What's that?
Didn't she deny for a long time that she did anything that was?
Yeah, I think that's true, Sid, and you know her,
Silver.
Silver, right,
It's
you
been a
know
long
her.
time, but, so I think that there's something in that, so that it's a good thing. This is very hard to do, it's a good thing that she's recognizing that there was something to regret in the way she conducted.
I think you're absolutely right. In other words, rather than basically saying either it happened to me, I had no control over it. Or saying, I did what I wanted to do. Instead, you basically say, I have some responsibility.
Yeah, and she's realizing that there was pain caused and she's sorry for it.
Yeah,
And somehow, I would suggest to explore forgiveness,
Yeah.
I think that's true. Well, thank you.
and love.
Thank you.
And Alan, I just wanted to add one small thing because we are talking about someone who's not present right now. And I wanted to just share that fact that at least it's not through Pathwork that I've learned this, but it's through A Course in Miracles, where The case, two things are probably the most important items in A Course in Miracles. One is check to see whether or not your reaction to your brother is always appreciation or not. Because if it's not appreciation, there's something egoic about it. That's first. Okay, because if it's
your fellow traveler on this path.
yes,
Or
exactly,
someone
right.
who-
The only reaction to your brother that's worthy or that's correct is appreciation, period, is what it says. And it's very clear about
Who
that.
said-
A Course in
Oh,
Miracles.
Course in-
And the other thing that it says is the only thing that this course is teaching is the acceptance of the atonement for yourself. It says extremely clearly that this course is not about teaching someone else how to forgive themselves. It's not about trying to fix XYZ in the world or whatever. It's about accepting within and demonstrating that love. And if you can do that and accept, so all I'm going to say is that when it comes to talking about other people, what's always in the back of my mind, I mean, literally at this point, after 10 years, no, more, 14 years of doing A Course in Miracles, is literally check yourself. Just, I'm not saying you, I'm saying for myself. When I do that, I'm always reinvestigating in myself as I'm talking about someone else, that I'm not adding into this and trying to make it something for myself in that. Because it's so important that when we're in communion with other people, that, and I've seen this on multiple levels with multiple siblings and multiple friends. It's like, especially ones that get turned on to the course or that get turned on to Pathwork very quickly, they become evangelical and they become very quick to want to tell other people how to apply things. And, oh, this is what I learned and this is what you should learn. But I just find it very, I don't know, it's very clear to me that's not the path forward. The path forward is to demonstrate the principles yourself, live within the atonement, as the course would say, which is basically recognition of your true self, which is why I always typically try to bring up that you're not Teresa or I'm not Kevin or you're not Tracy, right? You're actually the God self, truly. I mean, truly, deep down inside, you're the God self. And if that's the atonement in A Course in Miracles, and if you can remember that you're the God self, and that's truly what you are deep down inside, every instant, every moment, then it adds at least a gap to in the instant to when you're approached by your sister. That's all I would say. And that you can respond with a sense of either what you can hear from them. Are they asking, are they saying this for compassion? Are they saying this just to regurgitate? And you know them long enough. Or what are they looking for from you? They're not asking for your suggestion. I know they're not. It's very rare they're asking for your exact suggestion as to what they're going to do. Advice is bullshit. I'll just say that up front. Okay. Advice is what you would do for yourself in that situation. But that's not what they think they are. And if they're confused about who they think they are, the best thing you can do is demonstrate that forgiveness and that love and that compassion and that unity to them. Oh, I'm sorry you're there.
Or for instance, if you answer the question that they may have with how you handle it, those feelings in yourself, or how you would handle those feelings, that's a guideline for them. Like if I explain to her my philosophy that I don't believe in regret, perhaps that's beneficial. Maybe that helps her understand her own issue a little bit, but
I'm just saying,
yeah,
it may pull them away from where you want them to grow or hope that they can grow into. It's about demonstrating your principles rather than them. And so they will see the light in you.
Oh, yeah, look, I mean, I think that
Yeah.
this is axiomatic. I mean,
Right?
we all understand that the way to influence others is not telling them something or
Right.
asking them to do something. I mean, you could recommend maybe a guru or a teacher, but that's an invitation for them to engage in a process of self-transformation. But when you change yourself,
Yes.
then people say, hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
This person has something
Mhm.
that they have been able to do that I want to understand,
Yeah.
right?
Well, plus,
Right?
once you
Kind of
change
thing.
yourself, you just by definition change.
The world
Yes.
around you.
Yeah.
The world
Yes,
changes.
that's right, because you
I just
no
had that.
longer, right,
You had that with your green.
right,
No,
because,
no, more recent,
Wait,
like
what, Lisa?
2 weeks ago. but-
Yeah.
Can you talk a little about it?
Well, what
If
is
you,
it?
do you want to?
I would share. So I was struggling. I've been fighting with my siblings for a while now, and then I think I might have told, maybe shared this with Barbara, but one of my big issues that I found at Seven Oaks was in I always feel left out. That was what I keep recreating. I'm excluded. I'm, from a big family, and I kept recreating this, and I was like, why do I keep recreating this? And anyway, I've been working on this for a long time, and then my brother called me up and he said, my mother is elderly, and I was they were staying at the house with her, and I was coming over for dinner, and Paul said to me, my brother, so we're all going for a gathering at my house, and mom can't come, so would you stay home with her? So my reaction was always,
Here I go.
here I am, I'm being left out, how can they do this to me? It's so cruel. But I've been working on this so long, and finally, I have a helper, and my helper had said to me, well, why would you expect anything different? Like, this is the way it is. That this is what you're creating. This is how it is. So when this happened, and my brother said to me, we're having this party and you're not invited, basically. I had that thought, like, well, why would I expect anything different? So he said to me, can you stay home with mom? And I texted back, sure. Because then I was thinking, well, actually, it might be nice, because right now my mother's getting older. I don't have very much time with her alone. And they're all going, and it was genuine, like I genuinely felt different. And so I was like, sure. And then he was like, oh, great, So I'm leaving work and I'm on my way, and he texts me again and he says, mom wants to come. So of course he says to me, we don't want you to feel left out. So you're invited.
Good thing.
And I was like, miracles happen.
Yeah.
Like my energy changed. I didn't feel left out.
Yeah, you weren't left
I
out.
didn't.
You put yourself in a good place.
And I was like, what do I really want? What's going on? And
It's great.
it was a miracle.
so
And
you altered reality.
I did. And it was just like, I really honestly started screaming, fucking miracles happen.
Well, because also.
Like, it was a miracle, because it never would have happened if I felt left out, and
You would have
even
been
if-
left out.
even if I text
Yes.
sure,
Yes.
but I didn't mean it, and the energy behind
Yes,
it was,
Yeah, it's not about
you
the text,
fucking
it's the
asshole,
energy,
you
yeah.
left me out again,
Right.
So
your external reality reflected back to you exactly what you were inside.
Internally, right?
Internally.
Exactly.
Which
and the
was,
whole thing changed.
and the whole thing changed.
Mother, she didn't come, or?
No, she then said, she had a cold,
We need
and
to
they
start
said she didn't.
I like
feel
how
enough to
that
come.
question came up.
But then she
cute.
said she could come.
Okay, friends, so Tracy reminds me, we should do our meditation.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I have to go catch a train.
Well, I wanted to share the page 9 here,
Yeah,
guys.
go ahead.
No, that's okay.
Go
I mean,
ahead.
Go
ahead, Juan, and then.
because she was talking about childlike,
Yeah,
and this is
yes.
I think it's very important. The guy makes a very beautiful distinction here between childish and childlike. So if it's no time, I mean, everybody can read page 9, second and third paragraph. Yeah.
I want you to share. You can.
Okay. I mean, I don't know if we have the time, but okay, I try to read it for you. This is pertaining to, you were talking about childlike, Tracy, earlier. And the guy makes a beautiful distinction here between the two. He says, the question is asked, a lot of times you said that such and such is childish. I want to know what you mean by that. And the guy says, let us make a distinction between childish and childlike. Childlike is a beautiful, and no adult can be truly joyful and creative and happy unless they preserve also their childlikeness. Childlikeness means the capacity to be joyous and adventurous, and to find out the excitement of new things, to be fresh and to question and to learn, and not to have a set mind in which one thinks one knows everything. That is being childlike, and that is an invaluable quality that you should truly nurture in you. By childish, I mean immature. Immaturity is the misunderstanding, the ignorance of the very young who have to learn and see what life is all about. It is perhaps the quality I just described, the inability to accept frustration, to which is childish or immature. It is the false belief that if you do not have what you want immediately, you will perish, or something bad, very bad, will happen, or you can never be happy again. That is childish. So is the inability to take discipline. That is childish, and in the sense that a person who is unable to take discipline is governed by false understanding, and that is very different from the childlike quality that is so valuable. Do you see what I mean? Isn't that something? A
Yeah.
beautiful distinction between the two.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So
Okay,
for
thank
sure.
you, thank you, Juan.
I'm
All right,
sorry that
so-
happens.
We are going to, all right,
Gotta catch your train, right?
I will, definitely. I'll be with you in spirit, I promise you.
okay, so we're gonna have,
Thank you for being with us.
God bless,
For all
be
that you
safe.
for sharing. Thank you, brother.
Take care, Kev. All right, so we're gonna have a 15-minute meditation. 15 minutes. Quarter of an hour. And I'm gonna read a section here.
You need the light first?
No.
No, I'm okay, I can read it. All right. I'll just read a small passage from page 3. And then we'll meditate together for 15 minutes. One of the most important aspects you learn on this path is the ability to open all doors. You should be aware that you deliberately wish to keep the doors closed. Always assume that you may be mistaken. Your view may be wrong. The truth may be different. After you are willing to let go of your defensiveness for the sake of truth, after you let go of the tightness and fearfulness of your opinion, you will find out whether you happen to be right about the issue in the first place. If it then turns out to be true, you will come back to this same knowledge, but in a very different way. I'm not only speaking about the particular question you asked, for God indeed exists. I speak generally about the rightness of holding on to a belief that is so often totally mistaken and distorted. Nothing makes you as unhappy as your own untruthful belief. Okay. All right, 15 minutes.